This is Mellissa Thomas of Florida National News. We are here at the Varsity Club at Camping World Stadium to witness a debate between Congressman Darren Soto and former Congressman Alan Grayson, both of whom are running for Congress for District 9. So stay tuned right here for the debate. It plans to be a very heated one between these two. Former Congressman Grayson has been kind of accusing Congressman Soto of dodging the debate. So here we are. Congressman Soto has said, hey, let's have them. Let's do it. So stay tuned right here for their remarks and for their interviews thereafter. This is Mellissa Thomas coming to you from downtown Orlando.
Let's talk about immigration for a moment. Is there a real compromise, Representative Soto?
So there could be. We had an Aguilar-Hurd bill that would have created a pathway to citizenship, had border technology without a wall. We tried to get that passed with a discharge petition, and the GOP Congress rejected it. But if that bill were to pass, that would get us some way towards it. But we still need to deal with separation of families, zero tolerance, and expand and have comprehensive immigration reform.
I don't agree. I think that sometimes when you're talking about compromise, it's simply not there. Now, if somebody knows about compromise in Congress, it's me. I passed 121 pieces of legislation in 4 years, more than any other member of Congress. And in fact, every single time that I did that with Republican votes. So I know how it happens, and I also know when it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen now because there's a fundamental disagreement between the parties about immigrants, about people who are here and are here without documents. Democrats believe that there should be a path to citizenship. Republicans don't. Unfortunately, there isn't any middle ground between those two things. I know which side I'm on. I support a short path to citizenship.
It's the question of one of the club members, Randy Ross. Have we handled, then, the influx of Puerto Ricans to Central Florida effectively? Congressman?
It's a total failure, and the large part is total failure because of the gentleman to my right. Darren, how many Section 8 vouchers to come to the state of Florida every year? Do you know? How many?
Florida does not draw down Section 8 vouchers because the state legislature is underfunding affordable housing.
Okay, that means you don't know.
You or I did.
You don't know how many come to the state, do you? Okay, the answer is 208,000 free vouchers from the federal government for Section 8 housing come to the state every year. And the gentleman to my right couldn't come up with 450 of them for the suffering people who now live in hotels on Irlo Bronson Highway. It's a total, complete failure. Not too long ago, the largest newspaper in San Juan, El Nuevo Dia, wrote an article on their front page, and they said, Puerto Ricans are not registering when they come to Florida because they are disgusted with the failure of their political leadership. You know what they were talking about.
I fought for 5 extensions of hotel vouchers, put forward a bill with our Senator, Bill Nelson, for disaster housing assistance programs. We've seen headline after headline, including evacuees calling me a hero in the Orlando Sentinel. Now, you saw headline after headline. Where were you? You were nowhere to be found. You didn't even help personally, which you could have probably done. You didn't make any comments. You have been non-existent, and now you're going to sit there as a Monday morning quarterback when we've been on the front lines every day at the hotels talking to the evacuees, placing hundreds of families. We've been doing the day-to-day work that's critical, and everybody in Central Florida knows it.
30 seconds, and then we're going to move on.
Darren, HUD has a program called the COC program that gives permanent housing to people for hurricane relief. Did you or anybody in your office apply for a grant from that program at any time in the past year?
We applied for the Disaster Housing Assistance Program, which is the main program that Senator Nelson and I are working on. And unfortunately, the GOP Senate rejected his move to get that bill forward. We've asked for it several times. That is the standard relief that happened in Katrina, that happened in Sandy, and if it's good enough for Americans in those states, it's good enough for Americans from Puerto Rico.
So HUD has a program for disaster relief that your office didn't even apply for. I think that's all we need to know about your effort in hurricane relief.
Why do you think the other candidate might not represent the district as well as you? Representative Soto?
Well, first, I actually live in the district rather than 30 miles away. And second, I represent the emerging demographics of the district and work every day humbly for my constituents, not for myself.
Listen, it's very simple. Slate Magazine named me the most effective member of Congress. I've demonstrated what you can do with this job. I haven't noticed anybody saying Darren Soto is the most effective member of Congress. You know, people talk about, is this somebody whom you like to have a coffee with or drink? The voters take it much more seriously than that. The voters know very simply, what are you going to do for me? Now, in my case, I doubled the competitive grants coming into our district in the first year that I was in office. from $100 million to $200 million in 1 year, just in 1 year. And in addition to that, when I took office, the unemployment rate in Orlando was higher than the statewide average, and when I left, it was lower than the statewide average. Jobs, 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 money, money, money. I've been able to do that like no one else. I don't just bring home the bacon, I bring home the whole pig. That's true. He actually legislates by carbon copy. He's literally taken amendments that I passed through the House and introduced them as his own. This is true. It's happened on multiple occasions.
Response?
Why would we not embrace good ideas?
The president has blown it ever since he came to office through cheating and colluding with the Russians. Frankly, I would have voted already to have him impeached. I would have hoped to see him impeached and convicted. I look forward, when I return to Congress, to introduce around 63 different articles of impeachment, one for each time the Republicans insisted on trying to repeal Obamacare. My opponent has now voted twice with the president against impeachment, and that's the worst form of appeasement that I can imagine.
Impeachment?
We have an investigation going right now, and should Mueller find that President Trump committed high crimes, I'd be the first to vote for impeachment. But we have a process to go through. And I doubt my opponent is the best person to be trying to take on Russia, since he supported Putin in the invasion of Crimea and has investments over there that makes it a total conflict of interest. In the end, I'm the only one who doesn't have a conflict of interest with Russia and will hold them accountable.
Okay, Darren, what investments do I have in Russia? Go ahead.
Lukoil oil. Okay,
I haven't owned Lukoil in 10 years. What else you got? Nothing. Okay, let's move on then.
What would it take?
Anybody?
Well, where's the response to your support of Putin invading Crimea and defending it?
Okay, let me give an answer. I saw the president say on national TV that he fired the FBI director because of that Russia thing. And then after that happened, after that collusion in broad daylight, that co-conspiracy in broad daylight, that effort to cover up in broad daylight, then my opponent voted twice against impeaching the president. Anybody who thinks that the president isn't guilty of collusion, anybody who thinks the president isn't guilty of a cover-up isn't paying attention. And that is what you might say about him.
The internet. What do we do about it? Should it remain free for all of us?
Yes. I have championed the cause of what's called net neutrality, which is poorly named. I mean, you know what Social Security is about. It's about securing society. Net neutrality, it sort of leaves a puzzle in your head. What we need to do is make sure that nobody who delivers the internet to us can discriminate. This is net non-discrimination, or net freedom. That's what it's really all about. Now, unfortunately, the Trump administration, dealing with lobbyists from AT&T, from other telephone companies, has prevailed upon the FCC, a supposedly independent body, to actually have your telephone carriers and your internet carriers provide the ability to discriminate against you. You know, right now, thanks to the Trump administration, if you want to watch YouTube, YouTube might have to pay for it. They'd have to pay to show you videos. Or they could be seen slower than some other channel called MeTube. Or alternatively, they can shut it down entirely. Under the Trump administration's new rules, which I fought when I was in Congress and collected 4 million signatures on a petition to defeat, under these rules, your internet is no longer accessible to you. The fundamental, essential base of the internet is that everybody can talk to everybody for the same single price. That's it. You pay your monthly fees, you get to talk to anybody equally all over the world. And that is being thwarted right now by the Trump administration, and it will ultimately become internet censorship. I'm not going to stand here and defend solely something called net neutrality. I will stand here and attack the coming internet censorship. That's what this is all about, and the fight has to be now.
Representative Soto?
Well, certainly we both can agree on this issue. The changes to net neutrality that the Trump administration and the FCC are proposing are bad for innovation. We have a lot of business people in the room. It's bad for business. Think of how much commerce has changed just over the last couple years. We need to make sure we're fostering communication. The world has changed with major companies like Facebook and Apple and other companies that are come through. We just heard that they made $1 trillion today. This is the future of our economy, and we can't afford to have stoplights and green lights based upon the powerful. We need to make sure to protect the net neutrality and to protect innovation in this nation for our economy here in Central Florida and for our dominance in our economy abroad.
Here today. How did you personally feel the debate went today?
You know, we knew it was going to be passionate, and I want to talk about, you know, my record of getting millions of dollars back for critical projects, our work to help Floridians who were victims of Hurricane Irma, as well as Puerto Ricans both on the island and fleeing the island after Hurricane Maria. And we covered a whole range of events. And, you know, I just think it's absolutely critical that we get our message out there and that we have an ability to mix it up.
And given your, in our previous interview, you mentioned you were going to run a positive campaign. How do you measure making sure to run a positive campaign in light of the attacks that Mr. Grayson is throwing at you?
So I run a positive campaign, but if I'm hit, I hit back even harder.
Give us your thoughts on the overall debate. How did you feel it went?
I think it went great. People want and need a champion for justice, equality, and peace. They need somebody who says what they're thinking but nobody else is saying, and somebody who gets good things done. They appreciate the fact that when I was in Congress, I passed more legislation than anybody else and had a dramatic effect on all sorts of important issues like expanding Social Security, making sure that taxes remain progressive so that working people don't have to pay too much, and equal justice for everybody. I think that what it showed is that there's a fundamental difference between the candidates here. My opponent is desperately trying to explain why he gets nothing done. I'm proudly explaining all the good things that I get done for seniors, for veterans, for women, and for everybody else who deserves a fair shake.
All right, and in light of you know, obviously the measures for Puerto Rico, and in light of Hurricane Maria and Hurricane Irma, what would you do differently, especially once you know, if you feel you get elected? What would you do differently?
I will work very hard right from the start in order to make sure that seniors get a raise. It's been 43 years since we increased Social Security 1 penny. During that time, income has doubled, and senior benefits have stayed exactly flat or even gone down by 3 or 4% because of the cost of living raise that cheats people each year a little bit. We need to also make sure that Medicare delivers on its actual promise. Medicare should cover every medical need, and instead it doesn't cover your eyes or ears or your teeth. It discriminates against parts of your head. So that has to change. These are concrete things that need to be done for the entire community. The Trump tax cut is a tax cut for Donald Trump. What we need is to take that money that he handed back to billionaires and multinational corporations and use it to cut taxes for ordinary people. I introduced a bill that would have eliminated federal taxes on half of the population. Absolutely eliminated them. You wouldn't even have to file a 1040. And that's the kind of progressive taxation that we need. Whether you're talking about seniors, whether you're talking about women's health, whether you're talking about health care, whether you're talking about gun control, the Grayson platform provided answers, and we were making progress in getting those things done.
And for those that are displaced, especially in Kissimmee, what would you be doing for them? What would your plan be for those?
They would already have permanent housing, and they would have had it a long time ago. As I indicated, there are 208,000 Section 8 vouchers issued by the government each year. My opponent didn't even know how many there were. And we're talking about sheltering 450 families. It's a disgrace, an absolute disgrace, that you have hundreds of thousands of free federal vouchers coming into the state every year, and he couldn't find housing for 450 people.
All right, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
News. We just wrapped up the debate between Congressman Darren Soto and former Congressman Alan Grayson. It was a bit hectic. It was quite a slugfest there between the two of them, particularly on the part of former Congressman Grayson. But there were some issues that the gentlemen did agree on. A lot of the questions were presented by the Tiger Bay Club members, which is a tradition of the Tiger Bay Club. But several of the issues they did agree on were net neutrality. They both agree that net neutrality is very important, and what the Trump administration is doing in that regard is wrong. They also agreed on the treatment of the country of Puerto Rico. They disagree on how to fix that, but they both agree that Puerto Rico does need better help. Another thing that they sort of agree on is the impeachment of President Trump. However, they disagree on how to go about that. Former Congressman Grayson demands his impeachment and indictment now, whereas Congressman Soto is insisting that the Mueller investigation run its full course. Stay tuned for more coverage of our politics and power right here at FloridaNationalNews.com. This is Mellissa Thomas coming to you from downtown Orlando.